Okay, good morning. Good morning. I am Brother Bruce. And today's TED Talk is going to be A Man and His Ultimate Truths. So, you will hear me say some things today that will come from religious texts. I want to state that I'm spiritual, but not religious. But the great things about ultimate truths is they come from all places. And I will quote from all places. You can find ultimate truths everywhere. You can find them in sports. You can find them in politics. It's funny, you can find them in politics. You can find them in religion. The great thing about them is they will glare out at you. In the beguiled and in the dirt, they shine like gold. First example of one. If you know the history of the Indian Revolution from the British Empire, Gandhi was a lawyer. His physical stature was, I don't know, 5'4", 5'5", and he weighed maybe 140 pounds. And this man, without a gun, without a knife, without anything, stood in front of the greatest land baron in the history of the world, the British Empire, and told them that when it's all said and done, you're not going to fight with us. You're simply going to walk out of our country. And the magistrate general looked at him and laughed. He said, "Is it your assertion, Mr. Gandhi, that the greatest empire on earth is just going to walk out of your country with all these riches here?" And he said, "Yes, because the will of millions and millions of Indians is greater than the will of the occupying hundreds of thousands that live here." And years later, that's exactly what happened. Because Gandhi knew the ultimate truth that his peaceful mission that he believed was ordained from a higher power was stronger than their occupation. He believed in that ultimate truth. And he led a peaceful occupation that pushed them out. Now, when I say ultimate truths of a man, I'm talking about things like this. For example, Jesus spoke that it was a man's responsibility to lead his family through discernment. Now, a lot of men don't lead their families through discernment. A lot of men these days, which is a big reason our society is so topsy-turvy, let the women lead the family. Or they wait until their family's in chaos and then they try to suffer the family through the strap or financial strangulation or overbearing screaming. They have lost their own way through alcohol, drugs, prostituting themselves to many women. They have lost their own guidance system, and when they come home through their own distortion, they take it out on their family because since their guidance system so screwed up, they don't know how to guide their family. The funny thing is, whether it's the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, or any other religion, the definition of what a man's supposed to be to his women and children, whether the wording is different, the meaning is almost essentially the same. We are supposed to be the guidance system to our families. But that guidance system is always supposed to come from a position of strength, but through discernment. And discernment is not whipping the holy ass of our children. Yes, sometimes it does mean discipline. And it can mean in a physical form. But we know, as gentlemen of this belief that we're part of, the difference between discipline and a beating when it comes to an ass whooping. They're not the same. Being a person of faith, we know that when we are trying to live in a truth, any truth. We're trying to follow a higher principle. Any higher principle is going to lead us to something better than ourselves, as we try to do here while helping each other. The reason I picked the word today, and I was glad I got him first, is because of unity. When we're part of an organization as such, then we always, as a combined better good, can do something better together than we could of ourselves. When we're pursuing ultimate truths, they're very easy to point out. My major problem with big organized religion, and I'm not going to pick on one in particular because would never come to an organization and then be disrespectful to that organization, is that as time goes on and you get the ability and languages change, you get the ability to, instead of translate these books, you get the ability to interpret these books, because the languages change, the languages fall off. So since the languages fall off, you're allowed, oh, that doesn't work, didn't really mean that. It means this. Well, now you've changed and interpreted what you really wanted to say. But the funny thing about ultimate truths is, even though you've interpreted, those ultimate truths can't be changed, and they ring out the truth. Because you can't change the truth. And the definition of what we are supposed to be as men never changes. It never changes. Now, I walk around and I see men in dresses, men identifying as something other than what we were brought up as men to be. I'm not judging them for them. I'm simply saying I know what I was ordained to be: father to my children, grandfather to my grandchildren. I have to stand erect and see what the ultimate truths are in this world. And as a man, I have to call the truth. And an ultimate truth, as I see it, is, in a discerning manner, I can't lie. And when I say I can't lie, that doesn't mean verbally. That means when I speak to my son, I speak from my heart in the context of righteousness, and that righteousness speaks to how he's going to speak to his son. We have to raise people with truth. When I witness truth, I'm not talking about the mundane things in life. I'm talking about what I've even witnessed here. When I watch one of my brothers build a college, when I watch somebody else, with his trucking business, when I watch somebody else in my life who has 2 electrical companies and a real estate company. When I watch these people, they're not the people that I watch do mundane things. These aren't the people that waste their time, with the mundane. Ultimate truth people are rewarded with ultimate truth success. I have a high school education, been all over the planet. I have saved no less than 50 lives that I can personally account for. Don't know how many more. That's rewarding. That's rewarding because the grand architect has put me in place to be there to do those things, knowing that I was the righteous brother to do those things. I've made a lot of money. I don't have it currently, but it has supported raising up people that are of high worth. I've been a public speaker. As a public speaker speaking these type of words, it has rang out and helped children of all ages, prisoners in different prisons, find direction. Some of them had given up on their lives, have now found direction. That may not be monetary success, but it's success. There are different forms of truth that create different forms of success. We see our payoff in different ways, but ultimate truths rise up. I loved when I first came here, my first time on the call, everyone said Grand Risings. A lot of my brothers from the military start out their posts with Grand Risings, my brother. I love that greeting. I consider that an ultimate truth, because what better greeting could you have for someone than Grand Rising? Because when we wish for each other to rise, in that it's an ultimate truth. An ultimate truth, as my definition, is something that can't be denied. When I look for ultimate truths, what I'm talking about is how we parent, how we guide, what we see in others, how we build our flock, how we grow. You can find them everywhere. Martin Luther King talked about his dream. There was a pimp constantly in prison, became the highest vocal speaker for blacks in the United States and the world, murdered because his message was becoming too strong for white America to hear. Malcolm X. And before he died, became a purveyor of peace, because he was speaking so much truth, they had to stop him. And before he died, in one of his speeches, I don't remember the one, I'm bad at quoting things, he spoke about the ultimate truth of a man as a father with his children. Linked right back to the same thing I started this with. It's found everywhere. It is absolutely found everywhere. There's a writer named Lao Tzu, little Chinese guy, wrote a book called the Tao Te Ching. It means the way of living life with character. It was written centuries ago. It is the second most republished and rewritten scripture in the history of the world behind the Bible. It means the way of living life with character. How much could we use that today? It's just poems and parables. That's all it is. I'm going to finish up now because I'd like to have time for questions and answers. And I want to finish up with one of my favorite ultimate truths. I'm a recovering addict. When I got clean, I called my father, who I thought was one of my heroes. I said to my father, Dad, I'm in rehab in the military. My dad was in shock. He said, can I give you an answer next week? So the next Sunday, I called back up, because in the military, you only get one phone call a week. I said, Dad, I spent the whole week petrified that you weren't going to ever speak to me again. My dad said, of course I'm going to speak to you. I'm your father. And I love you. I said, well, what do you think about me being a drug addict? He said, I'm sorry that I let you down. I said, how could you let me down? It was my full-time job keeping it from you. And he said to me, I can't believe that I didn't know. It explains a lot. A lot of things I couldn't understand when you were a kid. Please keep doing whatever they tell you to get better. I love you. I got your back forever. He was an ultimate truth father. He loved me when he needed to love me, disciplined when he needed to discipline me, and he had my back till the day I died. That's where I learned my ultimate truth from. I'm Bruce. That's what I got on Ultimate Truths.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Very powerful. Thank you. I speechless. No question after that one from me.
Can I ask where did you derive your inspiration? What were your biggest inspirations in life? What experiences?
Uh so I as I said, I'm a recovering addict. Um I started using at 11 years old. My mom was an addict. I had a very rough childhood. I read a lot. Some of my favorite, and I watched TV a lot. Some of my favorite people were Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Gandhi, of course. Some of them were my inspirations. I was in the military a lot. I got to travel to almost every country in the world. I read a lot, and my reading. I'm very, very for a person that barely made it out of high school. I'm very well read. Um, I read a lot of Don Miguel Ruiz, Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman changed my life. Um, I've read a lot of Taoism. I had a Taoist master in Hawaii who was also a teacher of Bruce Lee's, who taught me a lot of philosophy. But basically, when you've been bullied enough by life and you learn to stand up, you refuse to be blind anymore. And when you decide to see clearly and what you see is love, you choose to have a thirst for what is truthful. When I look at the Bible, I'm just going to pick the Bible because I'm Jewish by birth, and you see blah 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 blah, and all you see is words, then you see a sentence like, "As a man, you should lead your family with discernment," and that kind of power jumps off the page and tells you to be a man. You see the part that was written by man, then you see the part that was written by God. And almost any book, I could pick up Snoopy and I'll see the part that was written by the author, then I'll see the part that was written by God. Because it's in almost every book. You know, when you wrote a letter to your wife from the Marine Corps home because you were lonely, some of that was written by you and some of that was written by God.
Thank you, brother. That's gigantic.
Thank you, man.
That's gigantic. My pleasure to even be in.
Oh,
Thank you.
I forgot one thing. I've been a member of, and I don't normally say it, but because you're my brothers, I've been a member of Narcotics Anonymous for 35 years, and I've had a lot of wonderful people there touch my life. I can't go without saying that because I'd be dead without them.
I don't. Thank you, brother Bruce.
Thank you, Brother Stephen.
Your experience in the Navy, how did that help you in terms of how did that help to arm you in terms of the things that you've read, like Way of the Peaceful Warrior and things of that nature, and how to be a man?
Well, I mean, I grew up in the Navy because if I had stayed home in Conshohocken, where I'm from, I mean, half my friends that I ran around with are either the same exact person they were when I left or they're dead because I ran with a very hard crew. Half of them have been incarcerated. Um, but like I said, some of them are the exact same person I left, mentally, situationally. Um, a lot of them are dead because we ran around pretty hard. The Navy helped me grow up, eventually got me clean and sober. But I had some great mentors there. Traveling the world, made me worldly, but it also enabled me to become the worst version of myself, the best version of myself, and not do it in my hometown. And that might sound funny, but the old expression, don't shit where you sleep. Well, if I would have done all that back home, I don't know if anybody that loved me would have ever spoke to me again. But also, I got to study under one of the greatest spiritualists of our time that almost nobody knows because he's a recluse in Hawaii, but he taught Bruce Lee as a child. And that would have never happened if it wasn't for the Navy. And I would have never encountered my counselor who knew about Way the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And that book has changed my life 50 times. And I recommend that to anybody who wants to go on a spiritual journey. Plus, fighting fires on ships is cool as hell. Just throwing that in.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Brother Andrew.
My question is how to be a man thinking logically and thinking like a man thinks. The books, Men from Mars and Women from Venus, helped a little bit, but how does a man thinking logically deal with women who think very, very emotionally without going crazy when leading them in the right direction?
Well, my opinion on that, and you may not want to listen to me because I'm single and I've just decided to not date anymore, is that you're never going to be compatible with a woman trying to use what's between your ears, because we're not supposed to think with women. Men think, women feel. And the only way to actually be successful woman, in my opinion, is you have to trust your God-given abilities with what I just spoke about with your ultimate truths. And you have to be willing to be the right man, live righteously as a man, but then you have to use your heart and soul with a woman, and you have to attract the right woman and guide yourself, and she's either going to go with you or she's not. And women feel, and that means that you have to be able to feel with them, and you're not going to think a woman through her feelings. It's not going to happen. She's just not going to think with you. They're not wired like that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'd like to say thank you for allowing me this time.